In the quiet village of Umwaka, nestled deep within the embrace of lush hills and whispering forests, lived a poor boy named Obinna. Obinna was no older than 12, with feet hardened from walking barefoot and a spirit that sparkled despite the weight of poverty. He lived with his old grandmother, Mama Eek, in a small weathered hut. At the edge of the village, they barely had enough to eat, sometimes surviving on bitter herbs and the kindness of neighbors. Yet Obinna never complained. He was known for his wide smile and curious eyes, always eager to help others even in his lack. One fateful morning, Mama Ik lay weak on her mat, her breath shallow, her body trembling with fever. The harmattan winds had been cruel, and the chill had crept into her bones. Obinna tried to boil some leaves to soothe her pain, but they had no firewood left. He decided to go clear a part of the small farm patch behind their home, hoping to find dry twigs and maybe some roots for food. As he dug into the red earth with a stick, his hand struck something hard. Curious, he brushed the soil away and uncovered a long wooden flute covered in dirt and vines. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, dark wood carved with ancient markings and cool to the touch, though the sun was high. There was something mysterious about it. Obinna cleaned the flute gently with the edge of his ragged shirt, then tucked it under his arm and ran back home. That evening, with no food and silence heavy in the air, he sat by Mama Eek, who was now barely moving. He took out the flute just to distract himself and blew softly into it. A sweet, haunting melody filled the room, as though the wind itself had come to listen, and then Mama Eek stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, her lips parted. She sat up slowly, and for the first time in days, she smiled. Obinna, my child. I feel no more pain. Stunned, Obinna kept playing, and her color returned. Her voice grew stronger. She even stood and walked, praising God and calling it a miracle. They did not know it was the flute. The next day, Obinna went to visit his friend Emeka, who had been sick for weeks. Out of hope and a little playful mischief, he played the flute again. Within minutes, Emeka sat up, laughing. His fever vanished. Now Obinna realized there was something miraculous about the flute. Word spread like bushfire. Soon, villagers lined up outside Mama Eek's hut, carrying sick children, limping elders, blind eyes, and wounded limbs. And with each note Obinna played, healing poured like rain from heaven. The people began to call him Nua Ozi, the child of the message. One afternoon, a tall messenger in the king's colors arrived with a royal staff. "The queen is dying," he said. "The king requests the boy with the mystery flute." Obinna, barefoot and wide-eyed, was led through the golden gates of Obiumwaka, the royal palace. The queen lay surrounded by healers who had tried everything. The king, a proud and wise man named Igwe Chaik, looked on with desperation. Obinna stepped forward, bowed low, and lifted the flute. The music that followed was like nothing the palace had ever heard. Birds perched on windows. Even the wind seemed to pause. The queen's eyes opened, her cheeks flushed with color. She took her first pain-free breath in months. The court erupted in cheers. The king embraced Obinna like a son and declared, "From today, Obinna shall be protected and honored in this land. His gift is from God." Obinna's flute had transformed his world and the lives of countless villagers, but not everyone celebrated. Prince Ikena, the king's first son, seethed with envy as the fame and admiration once reserved for royalty shifted to a humble village boy. Soon, word spread far beyond the village. Foreign visitors began trooping into the land, bringing their sick loved ones to witness the miracle firsthand. The king, moved by Obinna's selfless heart, built a new house for him and his grandmother, providing them with an abundance of food and supplies. To accommodate the growing number of people seeking healing, the king commissioned the construction of a special shelter, a serene space where the sick could gather while Obinna played his healing flute, and so the village became a haven for hope. Men, women, children, and the elderly, all afflicted with various ailments, were healed under the music of Obinna's flute. But envy still burned in Prince Ikenna's heart. One day, while Obinna played to soothe the sick woman, Ikenna approached, watching the crowd in awe. He thought, why must he alone play this flute? I am the crown prince. If he can do it, so can I. When it was the turn of a young girl who had been sick for years, Prince Ikenna marched forward, grabbed the flute from Obinna's hands, and declared, I am the crown prince. This flute is a blessing to the entire village, not just to a mere boy. He raised the flute to his lips and played, the notes echoed, but no healing followed. The sick girl remained on the ground, shivering and weak. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. People shook their heads, whispering, the flute does not answer to envy. Even power cannot fake purity. Ikenna, astute, humiliated, and heartbroken. He walked away from the shelter in silence. As the crowd dispersed, a wise elder remarked, the gift is not the flute, it is the heart. The flute only channeled the healing Obinna carried. Back at the palace, the king was furious. He scolded his son, you dishonored a sacred gift and embarrassed our village. Never do such a thing again. The prince was very sad. He thought his father would support him. He went to his room enraged and sad. He refused the dinner served by the maids that night. A year passed. One day the king fell gravely ill. No medicine could cure him. One night, weak and desperate, the king sent a messenger to tell Obinna to come to the palace the next morning to play the healing flute for him. Prince Ikenna saw this as his moment of revenge. Let him not heal my father, he thought. Let the king die, and I shall wear the crown. Obinna will be my servant, and the flute will serve me. Consumed by greed, he sent for thugs in the dead of night to steal the flute from Obinna's house. The hut was dim, lit only by a sliver of moonlight creeping through a crack in the thatch. The air smelled of clay, palm oil, and sleeping dust. The thieves slipped inside like shadows, careful not to knock over the clay pots lining the floor. They paused when Obinna stirred slightly in his sleep, clutching a cloth to his chest. One thug reached for the machete at his belt, but the leader held up a warning finger. No blood, his eyes seemed to say, just take the flute. They scanned the room. At first, they found nothing, just blankets, mats, a pile of worn clothes, a gourd of water. Then the youngest thief's eyes fell on a carved wooden box on a raised shelf above the hearth. Intrigued by its polish and odd placement, he carefully opened it, and there it was. Wrapped in indigo cloth was the flute, dark and smooth, pulsing faintly with a strange warmth even in his hands. He grinned. I've got it, he whispered. Just then, a dry cough escaped the grandmother's lips. The thieves froze. Every second felt like an eternity, but she didn't wake. Her breathing deepened again. They slipped out, careful to re-shut the door, and darted into the bush. The moment they reached the trees, they broke into a silent run. But as they crossed the path leading toward the river, thunder rumbled in the distance. The skies, once quiet, began to churn. The youngest of the group clutched the flute tight, a strange unease rising in his chest. I don't like this, he muttered. It's like the flute knows. The wind howled. Rain began to fall in sharp, angry drops. The thieves ran faster, soaked and slipping on the muddy footpath. The rain poured violently. In the darkness, the thieves stumbled into a flooded ditch. The raging waters swept them away. The next morning, Obinna woke with a start. He sat up, heart pounding. Something felt wrong. The air was too still, the room too quiet. He scanned the hut, eyes adjusting to the dark. He moved toward the shelf. The box was open. His heart dropped. The flute was gone. No, he whispered, waking his grandmother. No, they took it. Outside, the storm raged not just in the sky, but in the hearts of those who would soon learn what had been lost. He searched frantically, then rushed to the palace to report the theft. The news shook the village. Hope seemed lost. The king, now weaker than ever, sank into despair. Meanwhile, Prince Ikenna rejoiced, convinced his plan had succeeded. But soon, the lifeless bodies of the 4 thieves were found by fishermen, washed up near the river. None survived. The flute was nowhere to be found, and Prince Ikenna's hands remained empty. Obinna searched everywhere. The villagers joined in. The shelter, once filled with hope, fell silent. The king's condition worsened. His breath came in weak gasps. His eyes grew dim, and still the flute was lost. Word reached the king. The village held its breath. The queen wept openly in the courtyard. Just then, a traveling healer passed through the village. Hearing of the king's illness and the missing flute, he offered to help. With ancient herbs and sacred oils, he treated the king for 3 days and nights. Miraculously, the king recovered. Though still weak, his life was spared. And so the village moved on without the flute, but not without hope. But karma had not forgotten. Months later, Prince Ikenna fell ill. It began subtly. At first, it was only a persistent cough. The palace healers said it was nothing. Perhaps the harmat and dust had settled in his chest. Prince Ikenna waved it off, proud and unbothered, brushing aside the worried glances of his attendants. He still walked the courtyards with a princely stride, still sat in council beside his father. The king, chin held high, even if he now carried a handkerchief stained with flecks of red. But then came the fever. At first it warmed him like midday sun, then it burned like 1,000 torches lit behind his eyes. The prince began to sweat through his robes, drenching fine silks by mid-morning. His eyes turned glassy, and his voice, once full and commanding, weakened into a hoarse whisper. The royal physicians were summoned at once. They brought decoctions of bitter roots, steaming bowls of healing herbs, sacred oils pressed from the heart of palm trees. Yet nothing worked. When one healer tried to chant over him, the prince screamed, and begged them to stop, clutching at his chest as if something inside him were tearing free. The king grew restless. "Try everything," he commanded. "Summon the seers, bring priests, consult the stars if you must. My son must not die." On his final day, Ikenna sent for Obinna, lying pale on his bed, his voice a whisper. He confessed everything: the jealousy, the theft, the plan to stop the healing. Tears rolled down his face. "Forgive me, Obinna. I was wrong." Obinna took his hand gently. "I forgive you." Prince Ikenna died that evening, not as a villain, but as a boy who had let envy blind him and who found peace in the end. The king, heartbroken, named his younger son, a boy of gentle nature, as heir to the throne. Months passed. One morning, Obinna visited the old farmland where he once lived with his grandmother. The earth was rich, the air smelled of dew. As he tilled the soil, his hoe struck something hard. He bent down, brushed away the dirt, and gasped. The flute, weathered, dusty, but whole. He lifted it slowly, hands trembling. He brought it to his lips and played. The sound rose, rich and beautiful, as though the land itself had been waiting. Birds gathered on branches. The wind danced in joy. And from far away, the villagers heard the familiar tune, the song of healing, returning home.
Thank you for watching this video. Please like, share, and subscribe.